are finally back after a long and tumultuous offseason. The NFL is here. And as always, we've got some banger predictions headed into week one. Starting things off, we've got a game between the Packers and the Eagles in Brazil. And while the biggest topic of discussion around this game is the crime rate of the country it's in, it is still going to be a compelling matchup. And normally, I clown on people for saying week one doesn't matter. It doesn't tell us anything. It tells us a lot. These games are important. They determine playoff seeding, if you're even going to make the playoffs. For a team like the Packers, which might be on the bubble, this is a big win they could snag early. But I am not going to read too much into a football game played in Brazil. Would be the same case we were playing this in Germany, France, Spain, whatever. The international games, it's hard to get a good feel for. That being said, I'm just going to predict it like I would any other game. So you've got the Eagles. Flip the entire organization in the offseason. New coordinators, completely new secondary. Got Saquon Barkley now, and they're going to try and pound the ball down opposing teams' throats. Meanwhile, you've got the Packers. Still the youngest team in football. Still a deep receiver room with no true number one superstar. Now they've got Josh Jacobs. Now they've got a much more healthy running game than last year. But it's all going to come down to how well Jordan Love can move the ball against this Eagles. A young defensive line and young secondary. Ultimately, I don't think it's going to be phenomenal straight out of the gate. I think passing attacks struggle in week one. I think most of these games are going to come down to who is going to run the ball better and who is a better defense. And in both cases, the Eagles are far superior to the Packers. They've got Saquon Barkley. I don't care that Jason Kelce is gone. I don't care that Fletcher Cox is gone. Their D-line is better than the Packers. Their O-line is better than the Packers. They're going to be able to move the ball up and down the field at will with Saquon Barkley or Jalen Hurts. Doesn't really matter. Whoever is carrying the ball for the Eagles will be an effective rusher in this game. They're going to take the ball, control the clock, get a fairly comfortable W in Brazil to start the season.
Well, to defend the people that say week one doesn't matter, the Chiefs lost in week one last season and then went on to win the Super Bowl. So in some respects, it does not matter. As far as the win column, obviously, it matters if teams are going to make that playoff push. And this is an opportunity for the Eagles to start to prove to everyone that the collapse they had at the end of last season was a fluke with the new coaching staff, with some of the new pieces they added on offense and defense, the changes that they've made, that they are a new team ready to win the NFC East, ready to go back to the conference championship, and hopefully back to the Super Bowl. On the Packers side of things, this is an opportunity for them to prove that the end of last season, the push they made, the big win they had in Dallas was not a mistake. Paying Jordan Love was not a mistake. They have four receivers that can get it done and win in a hostile environment that is not the Packers Stadium or even the Eagles Stadium. They're playing in a different country. So what I will agree with Isaiah on is that I do think because of it being played in Brazil, being week one, the passing attack may take a couple weeks to really get into the flow of things. It is going to come down to the run game. And I trust Saquon Barkley and that Eagles offensive line to get the job done. I think they're going to win this game, as Isaiah does, based off the strength of that. But I'm not going to count the Packers out by any stretch of the imagination because I do have them still winning 10, 12 games this year. But in week one, I think the Eagles take it.
Not 11, 10 or 12. The only way the Packers win this game, in my opinion, is if the Vic Fangio defense simply does not resonate with the new defensive backs they've got in that secondary. Cooper DeJean may not be a designated starter. He is still going to have a role. Mitchell is going to have a big role. There are veterans in there, sure, but those two young players are going to need to step up and make some plays. And if that just doesn't happen, if they keep finding themselves getting burnt deep, that's how I see the Packers offense maybe building some momentum, maybe establishing that passing attack, maybe getting a little something done. But I believe in Vic Fangio. I believe in Kellen Moore. Sirianni, not so much belief in him, but we agree on the Eagles. We agree why, so I'm not going to beat around the bush too much. On to the next game. Steelers at the Falcons. And everyone seems to be writing off the Steelers this year. It's a reasonable thing to do. The back half of their schedule is insane. They're starting Russell Wilson at quarterback. They could be starting Justin Fields at quarterback by week 5. Things are not looking good. Meanwhile, the Packers, new, young, exciting team. Got Kirk Cousins, got rid of Arthur Smith, are going to be a run-first unit with Bijan Robinson, the best rookie running back we have seen in a while. Got Drake London. Kyle Pitts is finally going to get a lot more targets. Their O-line's good. But I just don't think they match up too well against what the Steelers are going to try and do to them. They've got a much better defense on the other side of the ball. They've got cornerbacks who can cover Drake London. They've got safeties who can come down and bang Kyle Pitts off his routes. And thanks to the acquisition of Patrick Queen, they now have linebackers who can shoot down, fill gaps, and hinder Bijan Robinson before he can really get going. They've also got a very solid defensive line and, of course, a top 6 edge rusher in TJ Watt. So that defense, nothing to sneeze at. Paired with who they are facing in Kirk Cousins coming off a surgically repaired Achilles, new offensive system, one he's going to take a little bit of time to get used to, and I just don't see the Falcons moving the ball all that well. Conversely, on the other end, I know they added Simmons, I know they added Judon, but I just don't think that Falcons run defense, which was abysmal last year, is going to be able to stop Jaylen Warren or Najee Harris. I think the Steelers are going to be a more effective running team. The Falcons may have more yards, but the Steelers are going to be more efficient in this game because of the caliber of defense they're running up against. I think the Steelers win a low-scoring game, a squeaker, and we start asking ourselves a bunch of questions which ultimately won't matter about Kirk Cousins and this new-look Falcons offense.
Well, I agree with you on one thing, and that this game is going to be a slugfest. When you look at both teams' quarterback situations, you have Russell Wilson, who holds on to the ball way too long, is not the same passer that he was earlier in his career, playing behind not the best offensive line in the world, and then you have Kirk Cousins coming fresh off of that Achilles injury, playing behind a very good offensive line, but I think the Falcons are going to look to protect him considering the defense that they're playing against. It's going to come down to the running backs on the Falcons and the running backs on the Steelers, and in this one, I am trusting Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier to get the job done because I think the Falcons will have a better passing game than the Steelers will in this game, even if they're playing a better defense. And I think with how talented Bijan Robinson is, they're going to rely on him on the ground and through the air to win this game for him. I don't think this is going to be a high-scoring game at all, but off the strength of Bijan Robinson, I think the Falcons are going to beat the Steelers in week 1.
Hey, I've drafted Bijan in 2 of my fantasy leagues. I hope more than most that he has a great game. But at the end of the day, if you want to say the Falcons have a great O-line, I tend to agree with you. Maybe that neutralizes some of the Steelers' strength, but I just don't think they're going to be able to move effectively off ball and get to guys like Patrick Queen or Minkah Fitzpatrick or Joey Porter for that matter. He's an underrated run defender at the cornerback position who are going to be able to flow and get to Bijan. I just don't see it working out too well. Maybe they get him some screen actions, maybe a little inside zone. They can get someone to climb up to a linebacker, but I am not overly optimistic for the Falcons. I think they start their season 0-1. Granted, I've kind of made peace with the fact the Steelers are somehow going 8-8-1, and those wins are going to have to come early based off the strength of the back half of their schedule. So maybe I'm grasping at straws here to preserve the Mike Tomlin winning record.
500 or above record.
I consider it 8-8-1 record with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields as your quarterbacks a win. But,
okay.
Speaking of questionable quarterback play, we've got the Bills taking on the Cardinals. And the reason I say questionable quarterback play is Josh Allen is known to have some stinkers in week 1. Granted, those mostly take place at MetLife, but I digress. You've got this new-look Cardinals team, an exciting young unit. Kyler Murray at quarterback, finally healthy, surgically repaired legs, ready to go, ready to dance, ready to show you why he was the first overall pick. You've got fantasy darling Trey McBride at tight end. He's going to catch 1 million touchdowns this year. You've got Marvin Harrison Jr., Marvelous Marv, by far the best wide receiver in this draft class. A guy who can conceivably go for 1,500 yards and 10 touchdowns as a rookie. And you've got the ever-reliable James Conner running the ball. And, how could I forget, we are in the second year of the Gannon defense. That unit is going to be much improved from last season. I say all that to say this. Come on, man, we know what is happening. We know Josh Allen is rolling up and rocking that Arizona defense. He's going to go for 35 plus easily on this unit. He is scoring at will. Curtis Samuel, Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid, James Cook's getting in on the action. Khalil Shakir is going off. This offense is going to cook the Arizona defense. It's going to be brutal. Josh Allen knows he essentially lost the MVP last season based off that week 1 primetime performance. That is not happening again. He is barbecuing this Arizona team. And while I think that Arizona offense is good, I think the Bills defense has gotten a little bit underrated because they have lost Tre'Davious White. They lost their safeties. They are missing Milano to start the year. And everyone's making the memes about, Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to barbecue Damar Hamlin, a starting safety. Oh, he's so bad. I don't think that's going to happen. I think that Bills team is a well-coached unit with an underrated D-line who's going to be able to pressure Kyler Murray and force him to make some off-platform throws. And he's very good at making those throws, but I just don't think it's going to work out this game. Give me the Bills running away from Arizona. The only way Arizona can make this close is if they keep the ball on the ground, limit the possessions of the Bills, and try and turn this one into a slugfest. But give me Buffalo.
Well, I think the Cardinals are more of a threat to the Bills than some people I'm not saying this is Isaiah, would like to admit, because a lot of people view the Bills as by far and away the best team in the AFC East, and not a lot of people are giving the Cardinals all that much credit. But Isaiah spoke to their defense, second year of the Gannon defense. They have Kyler Murray healthy, a reinvigorated offense with Marvin Harrison Jr. joining that side of the ball. A win for this Cardinals team would mean a lot for the rest of their season as far as building momentum and looking towards maybe sneaking in the playoffs as a wild card team. But on the other side of the ball, when it comes to the Bills, this is Josh Allen's opportunity to prove in week 1, where he sometimes struggles, that he can get it done without Stephon Diggs. And I think because of that, his push to win his first MVP this year, the game being in Buffalo, I think this is going to be a hard one for Buffalo to win, but I also think it is going to be a relatively close game, and the Cardinals' offense is going to keep it within distance.
I don't agree with you at all. Look, the Bills can move the ball in the air much better than the Cardinals, and if push comes to shove, I've got more faith in James Cook than I do in James Conner. There's no two ways about it. I've got more faith in Josh Allen as a rusher than I do Kyler Murray. That being said, can you imagine the discourse if the Bills go out there and stink it up in Josh Allen's first game without Stephon Diggs in 3 years? That is going to be some all-time stuff right there. Like, if the Bills lose and Josh Allen plays poorly and the Texans win and Diggs goes for like 140 yards, it is going to be a rough week to be a Josh Allen and Buffalo Bills fan. I almost want that to happen. That would be some peak entertainment.
Next up, we have the Titans heading to Chicago to take on the Bears. Caleb Williams' first game. And looking at this matchup, I don't think it's going to be all that close. The Bears have the better quarterback, they have the better receiver room, they have the better tight end, the better offensive line, the better defense, home field advantage. I don't see the Bears losing this game. You mentioned it in a previous video. The one path to victory I could see the Titans having is that their interior defensive line, if T'Vondre Sweat is that guy paired with Jeffrey Simmons, completely stifles whatever run game the Bears have in DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson, Khalil Herbert, and they're averaging 2 yards a carry, and they're relying on Caleb Williams to throw the ball 45 times in order to win. That could be a recipe for disaster for the Bears. I don't see that happening. I think it could happen. I don't think it's completely out of the picture.
You can't say I don't see it happening, then say you see I could.
No, I don't. I don't think it's likely to happen. Is that a better
That is a preferable phrasing. Yeah. I like how you go out there and try and pull the rug out from under me on my take. Look, it's not just
something
the
I agree
interior.
with.
It's not just the interior of that Titans defensive line. Harold Landry had 10.5 sacks last year playing against right tackles. He is going to have that Bears defensive line busy. The interior of that interior of that offensive line is going to get wrecked. At the end of the day, we have greatly overhyped the Chicago Bears offensive line for one simple reason. They are much better than the units Bryce Young and Trevor Lawrence were stuck behind as rookies. Just because they're not bottom 3 O-lines does not mean they're some elite unit. This is not a top 10 offensive line. This might not be a top half offensive line. Braxton Jones is not a top 10 tackle. The interior has some big holes in it, and guys like Jeffrey Simmons, like T'Vondre Sweat, are going to be able to exploit those matchups. And the Titans know that Caleb Williams has some issues when teams can generate a pass rush without blitzing. If they can consistently pressure Williams, we are going to see some of those bad habits which manifested against Notre Dame in college. We will see interceptions. We will see bad, costly strip sacks because he holds onto the ball too long, and it's no longer preseason, and you're going up against first-team All-Pro guys who have some very passionate things to say about your fingernails. Also, to just go out and say, oh, Caleb Williams is the better quarterback. Like, rookie quarterbacks haven't historically struggled in week 1. Like, we didn't watch C.J. Stroud have a terrible first game against the Ravens defense last year. Like, we didn't watch Bryce Young get choked out by his week 1 opponent. Like, we didn't watch Trevor Lawrence suffer early in his career. It is hard to be a rookie quarterback. My picks are going to reflect this. There is not going to be a single winning rookie quarterback this week.
You're referencing C.J. Stroud playing the number 1 defense in football week 1.
Okay, he did play the number 1 defense in football. He played the Ravens. He didn't play the Browns. Let's be honest about this.
The Ravens were the number 1 defense in
football. The Browns were clearly a better defense than the Ravens. You are coping and seething and mulling Spalding, and that's okay.
We're rewriting
I
history.
know you like Caleb Williams.
That's besides
he
the
appeals
point.
To you. You
That's
really
besides
wish the
the
Giants
point.
had him as their
That's
quarterback.
besides the point.
I get it. I understand.
That's besides the point. And you're referencing Trevor
You're
Lawrence
trying to talk
with
over
Urban.
me.
You're referencing Trevor Lawrence with Urban Meyer and Bryce
Son,
Young on
the
a
difference
bad
between
Panthers
Urban
team.
Meyer and Matt Eberflus is not that different. I can keep going.
Okay.
Rookie quarterbacks struggle. You're acting like that's some outlandish take. Regardless of situation, rookie quarterbacks struggle early.
And Will Levis is on the other side of the field. So.
Yeah, I'd probably rather have Will Levis week 1 than Caleb Williams week 1 going into year 2 as opposed to going into his first ever game. Oh, he's
That's
so
an
bad.
insane take.
It's not an insane take. You're going to see. Like, you're acting like this is some lopsided affair. This is a 3.5 point spread.
I didn't say it was a lopsided
They're
affair.
better at every position. Their defensive line's so good. Oh, no, they got better quarterbacks, better receivers, better O-line.
I said they're going to win.
You said they were better at every position. You think it's just like a marginal difference everywhere? If you say they're better at every position, you think it's a lopsided affair. At the end of the day, this is going to come down to if DeAndre Hopkins is healthy or not. If he is healthy, if he's able to challenge that Bears secondary, open up some opportunities for guys like Tyler
what's Oprah
Boyd.
going to do?
Oh, you want to keep going? You want to keep going?
You can keep going.
I think I hurt your feelings a little bit. It's all right. I'm going to interrupt you at some point. I'm going to give it about, and when's the Giants segment? Yeah, we're going to have fun in the Giants segment. Anyway, if Diop is on the field, can Oprah up some opportunities? I'm going to keep saying that now.
Oprah?
We're Oprahing it up. You get a touchdown. You get a touchdown. Actually, it's a good phrase now that I think about it. If he can give the Titans receivers a fair shot against lesser cornerbacks, they're going to be able to exploit that matchup. That Bears defense forced a lot of turnovers last year, but a lot of those turnovers came against bad quarterbacks in the second half. Say what you want about Will Levis, he is better than Josh Dobbs. And he's probably better than Jared Goff playing outside too, if we're being brutally honest. But if they can keep the turnover margin low, if they can force Caleb Williams to throw off platform into tight coverages with pressure in his face, they will win this game. I think they can do that. I have a lot of faith in this Titans team. They're going to win 7 games this year, and this is going to be one of them.
When I say they have better at pretty much every position, that doesn't mean I think the score is going to be lopsided. I made no score prediction.
In high school?
What?
You played defensive back in high school, right?
No.
I can't tell because you've got a pretty good back pedal.
Okay.
Anyway, we've got the Patriots taking on the Bengals. And come on, man, what am I going to say about this one?
The
This
Bengals have
game
been
could have
blessed.
conceivably been close if Jamar Chase wasn't playing and Gonzalez got the opportunity to lock up someone like T. Higgins and really take away Joe Burrow's only offensive weapon. But presumably, Chase is playing unless he's going to pull a big switcheroo and hold out the morning of the game. This is going to be a blowout. This is going to be the most lopsided game outside of one we'll discuss later for the entire week. This is going to be a rough watch. This is an NFL red zone game where you only see the Bengals offense on the field. It's going to be rough.
They have been blessed heading into 2024 after a disappointing 2023, and it allows that offense to build momentum towards the rest of the season. It's not going to be a close game. There's not much we need to say about it. Jamar Chase, if he plays, will probably go for 200, or if they're double teaming him, T. Higgins is going to go for 200.
Yeah, I think Gonzalez can probably keep Chase relatively in check, but who after him is a real threat on that Patriots defense? Exactly. Not a good look to start the year. And it's in Cincinnati. This is woeful. You feel bad for the Patriots almost. Not really, but almost. Almost.
Now, we're heading to Indianapolis. The Texans taking on the Colts.
For us?
Yeah, we're going.
Sweet.
The Texans taking on the Colts. One of the most exciting games of Week 1. We have CJ Stroud taking on Anthony Richardson. Finally healthy, back after getting injured last year and only playing in 2.5 games. I think the Colts have a chance at making this game competitive, but I don't think they're necessarily going to win. They do not have all that much continuity on the offensive side of the ball. Anthony Richardson does not have a lot of starts under his belt. Adonai Mitchell, one of their starting receivers, brand new to the offense. They have new pieces on defense. And on the Texans side of the field, CJ Stroud has a year under his belt. They have a year under their belt with that offensive coordinator, with that head coach. They have 2 elite edge rushers. They added Stephon Diggs to the receiving core. Tank Dell is back and healthy after missing games late last season after breaking his leg. They added Joe Mixon to the backfield. I think the Texans are going to win this game. I'm hoping and I think we're going to see flashes from the Colts offense. but I think it is going to be hard for them to pull this one out just because of what the Texans did at the end of last season and what they added to that in the offseason.
You know, when I look at the Texans defense, I see a lot of big, famous names. I see Will Anderson, second overall pick, should have been the first overall pick, phenomenal athlete, defensive rookie of the year. I see a phenomenal game-changing defensive end in Danielle Hunter, someone who can just wreck offenses. I see Derek Stingley, LSU phenom. It's had some great seasons in the NFL. I don't see much else. I think they've got the star power, sure, but I don't think their defense is that good. Compare that inversely to the Colts. They've got some star power. They've got DeForest Buckner, but at the end of the day, when you're rolling out Kwity Paye, Latu, and that's the quality of pretty much every defensive player on your defense. Latu, I'm making a bit of an inference, assuming he's going to be good. But you're rolling out guys like Kwity Paye, who are a very above average starter at every position. I think I give you the edge. The Colts have a very good defense. Isn't going to matter. What's going to matter is Anthony Richardson and his ability or lack thereof to pass the ball. I view Anthony Richardson as pretty close to a rookie. Only started 4 games, injured, had to take time away from the team. I am not overly optimistic, particularly with what we saw in college. I think he can develop. I think he can be a good quarterback in the NFL, but he's got to change some stuff around. The biggest takeaway I'll have from this game is if he can develop or if he can't. Because if he is still doing what he did last year, running out of the pocket, not sliding, trying to dictate contact as a quarterback, I'm going to give up all hope on this Colts team because he'll be hurt again in the first half of the season, and it's just going to become a big old, oh, what if situation. If I see Anthony Richardson slide, if I see him go out of bounds, avoid contact, get rid of the ball instead of trying to fight his way out of sacks, I'll be very optimistic about this Colts team. Having said that, there's no way the Texans offense is not going up and down the field with Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, Joe Mixon, Nico Collins, and CJ Stroud. It's just not happening. Although, I'd like to get back to something I said earlier about the Bills. Imagine the discourse if Josh Allen goes out and dominates week 1 and Stephon Diggs has 3 catches for 42 yards and the Texans lose to the Colts. A thing of beauty one way or the other. I don't think either of those situations are going to happen, but a man can hope. I know you're hoping for that deep down. It'd be pretty funny. But you can't have 17 different clips and quotes come out about you and then stink it up week 1. Give me the Texans going away in this one. I'm not going to make too many judgments about the Colts besides about Anthony Richardson this week. Next, we've got the Jaguars headed on down to Miami to face off against the Dolphins. And something to note about this game, it's supposed to rain that day. There's supposed to be a little moisture on the field and in the air. And given what these two teams are supposed to be good at this year, that could prove interesting. Both those passing attacks could be slowed down. Trevor Lawrence's new toys in Brian Thomas and such may not get the ball as much as you would like to see. On the other side of the ball, that deep threat duo of Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle may not get as many long balls lobbed at them. This game is going to come down to who can run the ball better in an adverse environment. The Dolphins have a better offensive line. They've got better running backs. While I may prefer Travis Etienne over Raheem Mostert or Devin Achane by themselves, I'm not taking him over both. And Tank Bigsby seems like a nice guy, not in the same stratosphere as those other 3. Give me the Dolphins going away at a big 250, 300 yards on the ground, making a statement victory over the Jaguars in Florida.
I do not hate the Dolphins, and I know I predicted them to win 7 games this season, and that is going to be jarring to Dolphins fans or people that are Tua supporters. And maybe when I'm predicting this game, it is because I was overly optimistic last season, and I'm still living off the hype I had for Trevor Lawrence and what he was going to do in 2023. But with what the Jaguars did in the offseason to kind of rebuild the talent around him, the offensive line should be better. I love how Brian Thomas's skill set, Gabe Davis's skill set complement Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, who will operate from the inside. Travis Etienne was one of the most productive backs in the NFL last season out of the backfield as a runner, and he has the ability to catch passes. Their defense should be better. The Dolphins lost pieces. They don't have Christian Wilkins anymore on the interior of that defensive line. So I think it is likely going to be a close game. I'm picking the Jaguars to win. I think it'll be relatively close, but due to the moves they made on offense, I'm feeling a Jaguars W.
You're feeling a Jaguars W. Well, it's good to feel different things. I'd like to point out, though, if it doesn't rain, I think the Jaguars receivers should be able to exploit that Miami secondary with the exception of Jalen Ramsey. But conversely, the Jaguars secondary stinks. Like, this is not a good unit. Saxonville is long gone. This might be the worst secondary in football, at least bottom 5. Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle could each have 150 yards. This is a bad matchup for the Jaguars one way or the other. Their best case scenario is it rains, takes the air out of the ball, and they have to pound it out. They conceivably could win pounding it out. But if it doesn't rain, if it comes down to a passing matchup, the Dolphins are going to win and win dynamically.
Next up, we have the Panthers versus the Saints. And I have warmed up to the idea, as we've moved closer to the season starting, of the Panthers being better than they were last year. Much earlier in the process, I felt very strongly that the Panthers were going to be very bad, and I hope I'm not doing the same thing I did last season, because earlier in last season's offseason, I said the Panthers were going to be horrible, they're going to be the worst team in the NFL, and then I walked that back after some of the moves they made in free agency in the draft to support Bryce Young.
Yeah,
boy, was I wrong when I walked.
Got you lubed up. You were a big Adam Thielen guy.
Boy, was I wrong when I walked some of that back and thought they would win closer to 7 wins. But I'm feeling that same way again with Xavier Legette, Deontay Johnson. They added, who's a running back? Brooks in the draft. The defense was still very good last season, and they have a new head coach who helped elevate Geno Smith's career, helped Baker Mayfield last season. So I could see the Panthers being much better than what we saw last season. And on the Saints side of the ball, I think Derek Carr gets overhated for what he is. Is he a top 15 quarterback? No, he's not really close to that. But at the end of the day, he's not a bad quarterback, and he's still a starting caliber quarterback in the NFL. And they have Chris Olave, they have Alvin Kamara. Their defense under Dennis Allen has always been good, so I do still think the Saints win this game.
Do they have Google Translate? I don't think they do. If they do, it's good for them, because Dennis Allen, you might want to get ready to learn Chinese, pal. This is the beginning of the end for the Saints. The years of scraping by, getting between 7 and 9 wins, the post-Drew Brees era comes to an end. This is where it all falls apart for the Saints. Dave Canales has a habit of going in and having statement wins week 1. His year in Seattle, statement win over the Broncos. Everyone thought the Seahawks were going to get absolutely smoked by Denver with Russell Wilson. That didn't happen. Last year, everyone was picking the Vikings to dominate the Buccaneers. That didn't happen. Baker Mayfield emerged. It's happening again, folks. Bryce Young is here to play. He is going to cook that Saints secondary with his newly acquired weapons. He is going to be efficient. He is going to be decisive. He is going to stroll to see over the offensive line, so he's just going to have to do a few little hops up in the pocket and then get that ball off. Will they score tough points? Maybe. I think they go for between 25 and 28. It's an efficient 25 and 28, though. Take a lot of time off the clock. Make the other team work for it. On the other side, the Saints O-line, not good. Trevor Penning also might want to pick up a Chinese dictionary. He's in trouble. The weapons, severely overrated. Alvin Kamara is not a good runner of the football per se. He benefits heavily from catching a lot of balls out of the backfield. He is a better version of what Austin Eckler is. I am not moved by Alvin Kamara. I am not moved by Chris Olave. Chris Olave might not be the best receiver on the field this game. Give me the Panthers, giving him going away. I think the Saints score about 7 points. You don't hate Derek Carr enough, man. You are being too kind to Derek Carr.
You're
he
being
is the
too
most
big of a hater.
Unpopular man in the city of New Orleans. When your city would rather have famous Jameis Winston as their starting quarterback, that is a supreme indictment.
Derek Carr will go for a crisp 273 yards. Chris Olave will have a cool 112 yards, 2 touchdowns. Alvin Kamara is going to rush for 83 yards, another touchdown, and the Saints are winning this game.
Speaking of 83 yards, that is how many yards the Giants offense is going to go for against the Minnesota Vikings defense. I have waited a long time to talk about this game, and it really has been an enjoyable process for me to sit here all offseason and watch my co-host Hope diminish as more and more clips come out from training camp, preseason, of Daniel Jones being arguably the worst starting quarterback in all of football. And he really should be excited. They've got an impressive defensive line. I think Kayvon Thibodeau is an athletic freak. I am very high on Dexter Lawrence, maybe the best nose tackle in all of football. And of course, they've got Brian Burns. That being said, won't matter. They cannot move the ball offensively. The interior of their offensive line is horrible. Their tackle situation on the right side, appalling. And Daniel Jones is their quarterback. Their only hope is Malik Neighbors. But if you watch Malik Neighbors in college, you know he needs a long time, relatively speaking. He's still very fast, to get those deep routes going, to get those posts, goes, corners. to be as effective as he can be. Those double moves. He needs a second. The Vikings know that. They're going to put a safety on top of him, and they are going to unleash the hounds of war upon Daniel Jones. I'm talking Andrew Van Ginkel, Jonathan Grenard, Dallas Turner, a blitzing Ivan Pace, a blitzing Harrison Smith are going to ravage Daniel Jones in the backfield. He is going to need to be assisted off the field, not because he is injured in any way, but because he is so mentally rattled from what that Vikings pass rush is going to do to him. On the other side of the ball, the Vikings are better at virtually every position offensively than the Giants. Maybe you want to make an argument about tight end with Oliver because we don't know what he's going to look like as the number one guy. Fine, I'd accept that. Maybe you want to make the argument about Sam Darnold. I'd say there's not a gigantic difference between him and Jones in a vacuum. This is not a vacuum. The Vikings have a better offensive line. They've got great tackles. They've got a great running back in Aaron Jones. They've got the best receiver in football. They've got one of the best number 2 receivers in football who somehow avoided a suspension, and I'm still going to keep yelling about that until the NFL does something, and they are going to smoke the Giants on MetLife. The only thing which can stop the Vikings offense is MetLife turf. If 5 of their stars go down, then I can see the Giants making it a game. But unless that happens, Vikings are running away with this one.
Last year, I had an absolutely banger Giants prediction for week 1, and I am going to recreate that magic.
Would you like to go over that prediction before you get into it?
No, we do not need to.
As I recall, my co-host said the Giants were finally going to get a win over Dak Prescott. They were going to have a phenomenal offensive attack. Their defense was going to shut down the Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb would do nothing. And then, for the next week, our comment section was filled with nothing but 40-0 because the Giants got shut out and the Cowboys scored 40 points on them. Please, dear God, don't do that to me again. I didn't like getting comments on videos which I wasn't even a part of. You got me cooked by proximity with how horrible that take is. That is legitimately the worst take in the history of the program we have ever had for a single game prediction. That is an all-timer. Don't do it again. Please.
Malik Neighbors is going for 213 yards, 2 touchdowns, and we're going to be reminded why Sam Darnold hasn't had a starting quarterback job over the previous few seasons. He's not an accurate quarterback, and I am aware that Daniel Jones is throwing the ball for the Giants on their side of the field. But Malik Neighbors is going to be a better version of what Odell was, and if Odell at the tail end of his career could uplift Eli Manning and make his stat line look like he was still a very solid quarterback in the NFL, Malik Neighbors can do that for Daniel Jones, and they're playing the Vikings. Justin Jefferson, he is going to be standing on the sideline in awe as he watches Malik Neighbors rewrite the script of who the best LSU receiver in the NFL is. The Giants are going to win this game off of the strength of Malik Neighbors. I don't care about the talent the Vikings have on the offensive line, or that Justin Jefferson is on the other side of the field, or that they have Aaron Jones. Evan Neal is not stepping on the field. He has now been benched so that we don't have to worry about that, and the Giants are winning this one.
Gonna articulate on that even more. Is 2 touchdowns going to be enough? Are they going to be in such shocked awe of a receiver going for 200 yards on him? The Vikings offense just throws down their arms and says, we forfeit.
And Devin Singletary.
And you said better than a young version of Odell. Let's be clear about this for a second. You idiot Giants fans are the same people saying Odell the best start to his career of any wide receiver ever. So you think Malik Neighbors is going to be the best wide receiver ever to start his career?
Yes.
You are writing fan fiction. You are a degenerate. You should be publicly flogged. I'm glad you don't believe what you're saying because I think the viewers at home will be able to see, oh, he's just joking. He's just joshing around. Glad to see that. On to the next prediction.
Raiders, Chargers. I like both of these teams. I feel like I'm one of the few people that is optimistic for the Raiders this season. And I've also spoken very highly of the Chargers and what I think they can do under Jim Harbaugh. And a lot of people are going to pick the Chargers to win this game. It's at home, even though we know home games for the Chargers aren't necessarily home games. The Raiders, people don't like their quarterback, and they think with Justin Herbert back healthy, Jim Harbaugh leading the way, easy win for the Chargers. I don't think that's going to happen. I think a lot of people are discounting the talent the Raiders have on both sides of the ball just because it is going to be Gardner Minshew being the one who's throwing passes. They still have Devontae Adams, who's still playing at a high level. Jacoby Myers has been a very solid wide receiver too. They added Brock Bowers in the draft, an elite tight end prospect. We haven't seen him produce in the NFL, obviously. They have Michael Mayer as a very good tight end too, and Zamir White, you have not spoken glowingly of him, but I think he can be a very solid running back for the Raiders. And on the defensive side of the ball, their defensive line has the potential to be elite. It has the potential to be one of the best in the NFL with Christian Wilkins, Max Crosby, who's the end they drafted last year with the 6th overall pick. I know he wasn't good last year, from Texas
Tech.
That's what I meant. They have a lot of potential, and I think with the Chargers in week 1, with putting a bunch of new pieces together, it's going to be a whole new identity on offense for that organization. They're able to retain their edge rushers, which is a good thing. And I think the Chargers over the course of the season win 9-10 games. But I think this is one where the Raiders are able to catch them a little early before they truly put everything together.
Here's the problem. I agree with a lot of what you said. In terms of offensive weapons, the Chargers are at a supreme disadvantage. I like Ladd McConkey. Works really hard, weight room warrior, studier of the film, yada, yada, yada. I like Quinn Johnson more than anyone should, frankly. I am higher on him than even his own mother is at this point, but let's be real about this. They are not as good as what the Raiders are coming to bat with. And I'll say something nice about Zamir White. I got invited to the Shrine Bowl Combine for the area before our senior year. As part of that, I got to see the offensive lineman Zamir White had blocking for him in high school. It was all him. Those dudes stunk. So Zamir White, phenomenal high school running back, phenomenal college running back, I'd assume. He got drafted in the 4th round. Not a great NFL running back. But those advantages you have with Devontae Adams, with Michael Mayer, with Josh Reynolds are completely neutralized when you have Gardner Minshew throwing the ball. I would take the Chargers passing attack in a heartbeat over what the Raiders have, particularly since I think the Chargers have a much better tackle duo. I know Joel is about to get baptized by fire with Max Crosby coming at him. I'm aware of that. It's probably going to be a rough game for him, as it would be for any rookie tackle. But if there is a rookie tackle who cannot get destroyed by a top-tier edge, it's him. It's Joe Alt. He can keep him off Justin Herbert. Interiorly, Christian Wilkins, hard to run against. I think they do a lot of outside action away from Crosby. I think they try and get the Gus Bus going anywhere else besides at Wilkins or Crosby. Maybe that shrinks the field. Maybe that limits their game plan. I don't really care. I think they're going to have an effective rushing attack. I think defensively, they've still got their top 2 edges. They've still got a solid secondary, and they should be able to keep in check Gardner Minshew and his antics. It's bad that I'm calling a quarterback's play style antics, so I think that's very accurate for what Gardner Minshew does. He does chicanery, buffoonery, shenanigans in the backfield, and then throws the ball, and sometimes it gets caught, sometimes it doesn't. Give me the Chargers in this one. Superior coach, superior quarterback, superior defensive ends, and superior logo. Next, we've got the Seahawks taking on the Broncos. And the Broncos fans, they're starting to remind me of Bears fans from yesteryear, because no fan base has puffed out their chest more undeservedly, and no fan base is about to get their chest stomped on harder than the Denver Broncos. This game is not going to be close. Serious question. Outside of cornerback 1, what position are the Seahawks worse at than the Broncos? I'll answer it for you. None. They are better at absolutely every position. Maybe you want to argue with me about guard. Fine, I'll give you a superior left guard. Congratulations. You are losing this game by 30 plus points. You are not going to be able to move the ball offensively with your sorry running game, with your sorry receivers, and with the worst starting quarterback in the NFL. It's not happening. You morons have been fooled by Bo Nix's preseason highlights, and you will learn a hard lesson this week when he throws 3 interceptions against that Seahawks secondary. That Seahawks pass rush, reinvigorated through the draft, gets after him. Geno Smith doesn't even have to do anything to win this game. He can just hand it off to Kenneth Walker, run a few jet sweeps with JSN, and sip on his little sarsaparilla on the sideline and watch as Bo Nix implodes. I think that the Seahawks defense is going to outscore the Broncos offense this week. It is going to be a disgraceful showing for football. Sean Payton, you might want to get the Chinese dictionary I talked about Dennis Allen owning, because the end is coming for you too, bub. This is going to be a blowout. It's not going to be close. I don't think I'm going to watch this game anywhere besides NFL Red Zone, and then I'm only going to be watching the Seahawks offense. As I see 50-yard touchdown, 50-yard touchdown, pick 6 by Bo Nix, 50-yard touchdown. You see how it goes.
Is everyone moving to China? Anyone going to
Anyone
the German
related
football
to Sean
league?
Payton is headed to China. You could have the Germans. Daniel Jones, get ready to learn Deutsch, pal.
Well, when it comes to this game, I agree with you on a lot when it comes to comparing the talent of the two teams. And I think the Seahawks, they've flown under the radar a lot this offseason since they brought in their new head coach in Mike Macdonald. Not a lot of people have talked about them as a viable playoff team, and they kind of haven't really been in a lot of conversations. But they were very close to being a playoff team last year. And if their offensive line is able to be better than it was last year, JSN is healthy to start the season, kind of assert himself more predominantly in that wide receiver 2 role, and Geno Smith can reach what he was 2 seasons ago, this Seahawks team is going to be right in the thick of things. So with a defensive-minded head coach, their defense should be better than it was last year, especially you'd hope on the interior from a run defense perspective. And I think going against this Broncos team that doesn't have as much talent on the offensive side of the ball, I think
as much, aka any.
It is the Seahawks game to win.
Not only, I'm not going to keep going again because I go for another 5 minutes about how bad the Broncos are. I really did take some notes on that. I looked up players' birth dates, their zodiac signs, the lack of compatibility between Bo Nix and Cortland Sutton. I got astrological on this one. It's going to be a bad showing. I never want to see a Broncos fan pop up on my Twitter timeline again. I have screenshotted the tweets. You will not escape me.
Now, we're headed to Cleveland. The Cowboys...
Oh, you guys tickets.
The Cowboys taking on the Browns.
We'll be doing a lot of flying on Sunday.
And somehow, the Browns are favored to win this game. It does not make much sense to me. Nick Chubb is still not ready to go. The Browns quarterback is Deshaun Watson. And on the Cowboys side of things, they got CeeDee Lamb paid. He is happy and he is playing in this game. They have Dak Prescott, who is a phenomenal regular season quarterback. Still needs to get it done in the playoffs. Rico Dowdle has been named or rumored to be the primary back for the Cowboys. We'll wait to see if he's good enough to carry the running game of that Cowboys offense. And I think when people say, oh, the Browns, they have Myles Garrett, the Browns defense is so good, Deshaun Watson just needs to be okay. It's like they're ignoring that the Cowboys defense was also one of the best in the NFL last season, that the Cowboys have Micah Parsons on the field, and they still have talent on that defense. So I think in Cleveland, the Cowboys win this game, and people that are betting on the Browns to win, I don't really know what you're doing.
Well, the Cowboys had arguably the best passing defense in all of football last year. They had some injuries to that secondary, but that side of the ball, still very good. They were appalling in stopping the run. Any team with a functional running attack stampeded the Cowboys last year. Say Nick Chubb's not ready, Jerome Ford will be the best running back on that field. He clears Rico Dowdle effortlessly. He was on pace for 1,000 yards after that Chubb injury. If he'd start every single game, he would have been one of the premier rushers in the NFL. He's healthy. He's going to be ready to go. The interior of that Browns offensive line, very solid. The interior of that Cowboys defensive line. Hopefully Mozzie Smith figures it out. I'm a big fan of him.
He's eating a few cheeseburgers this offseason.
He's an athletic freak. But he was not ready last year. Hopefully he has had some ribs, some brisket, some rotisserie chicken. We don't do cheeseburgers down here in Dallas, son. Real Southerners know they get that good barbecue. Not that real barbecue, mind you, but the good barbecue. The Browns are going to pass the ball 10 times this game, and they're going to win the game. And you say Myles Garrett, oh, he's so good, whatever. Browns have a great defense. No two ways about it. And that is going to be exemplified with the Myles Garrett Tyler Guyton matchup. Tyler Guyton has started 15 games in his career at offensive tackle. And notice what I'm saying. I'm not saying in his collegiate career. I'm saying in his career. He was a defensive lineman in high school, played some tight end. He is not used to being an offensive tackle. And he is facing off against the best edge rusher of this generation. There is not enough help which can be sent his way to stop Myles Garrett from doing what he is going to do. I talked about Joe Alt and believing in him as a blue chip prospect, a phenomenal athlete, a freak of nature to stand up to Crosby and not let Crosby destroy the game. Myles Garrett is destroying this Dallas offense. He will have to be either triple teamed or you will accept the sacks and try and get the ball out within 1.5, 2 seconds against this Browns secondary. He is going to wreck shop. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a Khalil Mack-esque 6 sacks against Dak Prescott. He can be as good in the regular season as he wants. When he is on his back or on his stomach, having Myles Garrett give him that sweet treatment, it won't matter if he is the second coming of Tom Brady in the regular season. Give me the Browns in a defensive war, a masterclass from the Browns D-line, and silencing Jerry Jones. They're all in. They're all in on being 0-1.
Yeah,
They're the most all-in 0-1 team to ever exist.
I will not hate on the Cowboys offensive line or young players that they decide to draft and insert as starters week 1, because every single year we're like, oh, how could they draft that tackle? It's not going to work. They lost so-and-so. They're not going to be able to replace them. And they do it every single time. So when it comes to hating on the Cowboys, I enjoy hating them. But when it comes to the offensive linemen, they decide to coach up, develop, and start, I can't hate on them. I'm not going to say, while it is hard to play Myles Garrett in week 1, that is obviously going to be difficult to deal with. I'm never going to say the totality of their offensive line is going to be the reason they lose a game, at least heading into the game.
Well, it's going to be the totality because they're going to have to send 3 guys to block Myles Garrett, and someone else will be able to get pressure off that. But you say, oh yeah, we've made 5 other picks before. Tyler Smith got to spend time on the bench developing. He wasn't even supposed to be a guard originally. People thought he was going to be a tackle. Yet he got time to develop, change positions, and then became the second or third best left guard in the league. That's what happened with that. These guys don't go in week 1 and perform. Tyler Smith was not good week 1 of his rookie season as a starter. You can have as much faith in the O-line coaches and the organization as you want. In fact, faith is a good thing to have. Because Guyton needs to be praying. That is the only thing which is going to stop Myles Garrett. A lightning strike, the scoreboard falls on him, except they're in Cleveland, so the big scoreboard isn't even over their head. Divine intervention is the only thing which is stopping Myles Garrett from destroying this game plan.
Now, we have the Commanders headed to Tampa to take on the Buccaneers. Not exactly the most exciting matchup of the week, outside of the fact we get to see Jaden Daniels' first action as an NFL quarterback. And I don't feel very strongly about what the Commanders' offense is going to look like. I don't really have a great idea of what it's going to look like with what I feel is a kind of weird backfield. They only have one true number 1 wide receiver. They have an older Zach Ertz playing at tight end. What exactly are they going to be on the defensive side of the ball? I don't know. I think they're one of the bigger mysteries in the NFL as far as who they are as a football team. And on the Buccaneers side, they have all of their key pieces from last season. They added a piece to their offensive line in the draft. So while I think they're not going to win the NFC South again, I feel like this is a game that the Buccaneers win. Maybe Jaden Daniels struggles a little bit. Rookie heading in away game against the Buccaneers. And I think Baker Mayfield, Mike Evans, they win this one.
Say what you want about defensive-minded head coaches, talent, draft, free agency, whatever. The Commanders are not going to be good week 1 defensively. It's going to be a rough watch. The Buccaneers offense should be able to exploit this secondary, should be able to exploit the lack of a pass rush and move up and down the field at will. Mike Evans is still that guy, at least early in the season. He may get banged up, he may wear down a little bit as time goes on, but he's still pretty solid. Robbie White, solid. Chris Godwin, solid. Baker Mayfield, when there's no pressure in his face, pretty solid. The only way the Commanders keep this game close is they can generate some form of rushing attack outside of the tackles, whether that be with Jaden Daniels or B-Rob. I don't think that's going to happen. I think the defensive end tackle matchup favors favors the Buccaneers this week, but there is at least a path. What I want to see from Jaden Daniels is the same thing I want to see from Anthony Richardson. I really hope he has figured out how to slide. That would make me extremely happy because he's still doing what he did in college, throwing himself at Vita Vea through the air like a trebuchet's rock. He is going to get himself murdered. It's going to be a rough viewing experience for the folks at home rooting for the young phenom out of LSU. If he has, however, figured out a slide, can pick up yards, but is willing to give up on 3 or 4 of them for the sake of preserving his health, he's going to have a long career in front of him. That's what I'm going to be watching for in this game. I think the Commanders lose pretty badly because their defense stinks, and the Buccaneers start off 1-0. Whoopee for them. On to the Sunday night game between 2 teams which faced off in the playoffs. The Rams headed on up to Detroit. And I want you to know, I am Zoom calling Matthew Stafford's family so I can boo them more effectively, just so they get the authentic Detroit experience. As for the actual game, I think the Lions win this one pretty comfortably. You look at the matchups, you look at where they're good, where the other team's bad. The Lions have a better defensive line. I know, the draft, whatever, Kobe Turner. They're not comparing with Houston, Hutch, Davenport, Reader. It's just not the same thing. Secondarily, I think the Lions have done an exceptional job of rebuilding their secondary. You add on top of Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch, guys like Terrion Arnold. You pick up pieces in free agency which make that unit better. Offensively, they've got a way better rushing attack. Sure, Kyren Williams, Blake Corum, whatever. They don't compare to the Lions' offensive line, to Jahmyr Gibbs, and to David Montgomery. Quarterback, I think that's kind of a wash. I don't think Stafford is much better than Goff. I don't think Goff's much better than Stafford. And sure, in terms of wide receivers, the Rams may have the advantage. But in terms of pass catchers, there's not that big of a difference between guys like Sam Laporta and Amon-Ra St. Brown compared to Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp. The advantages for the Rams are marginal. The advantages for the Lions are drastic. Give me them in a game which starts off close but winds up snowballing. The only thing which can keep this game close is the Lions just taking the air out of the football and running it 20, 30 times in the second half, which they are very capable of doing.
I think this game is going to be the highest scoring game we see in week one. These are two high-powered offenses. As you mentioned, the Rams do have better receivers, but when it comes to the tight end position, the Lions have a significant advantage there. On the defensive side of the ball, I happen to think the Rams have a solid defense even with the departure of Aaron Donald. With the draft picks that they added, I think they have the depth to get the job done. Matthew Stafford, Jared Goff, both teams have a great backfield. Kyren Williams, Blake Corum versus Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. I think we're going to see a game where there's 30 to 40 points scored by each team. But given the fact that the game is in Detroit, I've spoken at length about how the continuity, what the Lions have been building towards, benefits them heading into 2024. I do think the Lions win this one, but I think it's going to be the most exciting and the most high-scoring game we see from week one.
You could have very exciting games without them being high-scoring. I don't think either team's going for 40. And I think both these teams being fairly run-heavy. Maybe you think the Rams pull back from that a little bit because of the receivers. But if you've got Blake Corum and Kyren Williams, you are probably running the ball 30 times, at least 25. That's going to hinder the final score. Take some time off the clock. I think it'll be a very good game. Can't wait to watch it. Can't wait to laugh as the Rams lose spectacularly. But we don't need to keep getting into that. We can agree to agree.
On to the Monday night game. The storylines it would create if the Jets were good this season would be immaculate. But that's not going to happen. The schedule makers, when they saw the antics that Aaron Rodgers was doing in the media during the offseason, they said, you're getting the 49ers on Monday Night Football in week one. Let's see if you can handle it. And the 49ers are going to punish him for it. They have all of the talent on the defensive side of the ball to put pressure on that. While it should be better offensive line, they don't have cohesion yet. It's not quite yet they're not a unified group of players like an offensive line that's been playing together for a number of seasons.
Well, you say that half these guys were on the Ravens last year, so they've been playing with each other a little bit.
There is that, but when it comes to even comparing the talent on both teams, if you believe in Aaron Rodgers or you're homers of Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall, the 49ers, I'd much rather have Brandon Ayuk, Deebo Samuel, and Juwan Jennings is still on the team, right? Because obviously Ricky Pearsall is not playing.
Well, I don't know, man. Ricky might tough that one out.
I'd prefer those receivers, and they have George Kittle.
You prefer your receivers unshot?
They have Christian McCaffrey, who I'm still taking over Breece Hall. Let's just call the defense a wash. And Brock Purdy behind the 49ers offensive line. I believe in that more than an 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers behind a Jets offensive line that is mostly new, albeit hopefully better than last year.
Yeah, calling the defense a wash would be nice, except it's not because the Jets defense is better than the 49ers defense. Let's be blunt about this. Talk about cohesion. The 49ers lost a lot of pieces in the offseason, and I think they can rebuild that. I think they'll be very solid towards the end of the year, but that defense is not going to be the same week one as it was in the playoffs last year. They are worse defensively than the Jets. There's no two ways about it. I'm not letting you call it a wash. In terms of the offensive line, I tend to agree that it is better to have a unit that is played together, even if they are slightly worse, than one which has more talent but no cohesion. But at the end of the day, if you think it is possible to flip an offensive line from bad to good through free agency, the Jets have done it. They've got Tyron Smith. They've got Morgan Moses. They've improved on the interior. They are a much better unit than last season. Mekhi Becton off being a guard in Philadelphia. Good for him. Wish him the best. This is going to be a close game. Brandon Ayuk not being with the team all offseason, lacking cohesion, is going to hurt them. Trent Williams not being on the team, practicing with his guys, is going to hurt them. That 49ers offensive line, with the exception of Williams, isn't good. There's no two ways about it. They're not average. They're not mediocre. They kind of stink without Trent Williams, and his absence is probably going to hurt their immediate production. I think the Jets have a better offensive line than the 49ers. I think the quarterback position is kind of a wash. We don't know what Aaron Rodgers is going to do. Presumably, we are going to get more than 4 snaps from him, given he is not playing on MetLife turf, but I'm intrigued to see. Schedule makers definitely don't like him. The Jets have a brutal schedule. I agree with you on that, but this is how they start off the season, with a 1-0 win on the road in San Francisco. Going to be a close game. I don't think it's going to be a particularly high-scoring game because the Jets' lack of experience together paired with the 49ers' solid defense and the 49ers' lack of experience together, having too many players away from the team offensively, paired with the Jets' amazing defense. It's going to be a good game to watch. A lot of narratives coming up. Going to be a little Brock Purdy slander in the mix. He's going to throw an interception to Sauce Gardner. He's going to make the mistake of challenging him. Deebo Samuel's probably going to get cooked on Twitter for some random reason, for not running a crisp slant route, whatever. Give me the Jets. Close defensive battle. Can't wait to see how this one turns out.
All we're going to be hearing after Monday Night Football are the tears of Jets fans seething and coping as their team is miserable yet once again.
Is this an inferiority complex? Like, are you that upset that you're going to be the little brother in New York as a Giants fan? I know it's rarely happened. The Jets have been so historically pathetic. I get that. Like, if there was another team in Minneapolis, if we had the Minneapolis Somalians, I'd be a little bit upset if they were better than the Vikings. It hurt me. But you got to accept reality on this one, I'm afraid.
That has been this week's podcast, or the predictions for week 1. Let us know what you think about all of the games, one of the games, 3 of the games down in the comments below. If you want to check out Underdog Fantasy, check out the promos they have this week. Use code Thicc with 2 C's, bonus cash up to $500, and we will see you in the next one.